November 21, 1964. Atlanta, Georgia. A package arrives at the home of Martin Luther King Jr. His wife, Coretta Scott King, opens it. Inside is an audio tape and a typewritten letter. The letter has no return address, no signature, no official letterhead. It begins, "King, in view of your low-grade, abnormal personal behavior, I will not dignify your name with either a Mr. or a Reverend or a Doctor." It calls him a fraud, an animal, an evil. It says his Nobel Prize will not save him. It says he is finished. And then it ends with these words, "King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do it. You are done. There is but one way out for you." The letter was telling Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself, and it was sent by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is not a conspiracy theory. The FBI admitted it. The Senate confirmed it. A draft of the letter was found in FBI files. The full unredacted version was discovered at the National Archives in 2014. The most powerful law enforcement agency in the United States tried to blackmail the leader of the civil rights movement into committing suicide. And for decades, almost nobody talked about it. If this investigation changes how you see American history, subscribe now. We investigate what the official story leaves out. The FBI's file on Martin Luther King Jr. began in 1955, the year he rose to national attention during the Montgomery bus boycott. At first, the Bureau justified its surveillance as a search for communist influence in the civil rights movement. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, saw King not just as a protest leader, but as a potential threat to national security. Internal field reports from the late 1950s tracked King's travel, speeches, and growing network. But the real turning point came with Stanley Levison, a New York lawyer and former Communist Party affiliate. Levison became a close advisor to King, drafting speeches, managing finances, and offering tactical advice. By 1962, Hoover's suspicion hardened into obsession. A memo in King's FBI file, dated June 15, 1962, noted King's close and continuing association with Levison, and warned that King had the potential to unify and electrify the Negro movement in the United States. The Bureau's language grew sharper. King was described as a target for communist infiltration and the most dangerous Negro in America. Surveillance expanded from field observation to wiretaps, document interception, and confidential informants embedded in King's inner circle. By the end of 1962, the Bureau was no longer simply watching. It was building a case, brick by brick, that would justify more aggressive tactics. The groundwork was laid for a campaign that would move far beyond investigation, towards sabotage, blackmail, and psychological warfare. William C. Sullivan, the FBI's chief of domestic intelligence, put the Bureau's intent on paper in June 1963. In a memo circulated to top officials, Sullivan wrote, "We must mark King now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro of the future in this nation from the standpoint of communism, the Negro, and national security." The language was blunt, the target clear. This was not suspicion, it was a call to action. Within months, the Bureau sought legal cover for its next move. On October 22, 1963, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy signed a memorandum authorizing wiretaps on King and his closest advisors. The document, entered into the official DOJ logbook, gave the FBI explicit permission to plant listening devices in King's home, his office, and even his hotel rooms. Kennedy's signature appears on the original order, now preserved in the National Archives. The stated reason: to investigate possible communist infiltration of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The real intent, as later revealed by the Church Committee, was to neutralize King as an effective leader. Sullivan's memos and Kennedy's authorization set the machinery in motion. The Bureau's technical teams began installing wiretaps and bugs. Every phone call, every private conversation, every confidential meeting, recorded, cataloged, and added to King's growing file. The policy pivot was complete. Surveillance was now sanctioned at the highest level, and the Bureau's campaign against King had moved from suspicion to sanctioned psychological warfare. Technical agents from the FBI's Special Services Division arrived with a single mission: capture everything. 4 separate telephone lines, King's home, the SCLC office, and 2 hotel room numbers were tapped under official DOJ authorization. Each call, no matter how trivial, was routed through bureau switchboards and recorded onto magnetic tape. The logs show relentless coverage. Between October 1963 and March 1968, the Bureau amassed more than 3,000 hours of raw audio from King's phones and private spaces. But the phone lines were only the beginning. Field technicians installed miniature microphones in at least 50 hotel rooms across Atlanta, Washington, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and beyond. The Bureau's equipment inventory lists condenser mics and magnetic transmitters, each assigned a serial number and a target location. Atlanta alone saw a dozen bugs planted in rooms at the Omni and the Flamingo. In Washington, microphones hid in the walls of the Willard and the Mayflower. New York's Plaza and St. Regis, Chicago's Drake and Palmer House, even the Beverly Wilshire in Los Angeles, all became listening posts. Agents rotated the devices, swapping out batteries and tape reels, logging the dates and times with bureaucratic precision. The Bureau's chain of custody forms tracked every reel. Each recording moved from the field to the audio lab in Washington, then into a locked vault. The tape index for the King operation runs to 271 reels, each labeled by date, location, and subject. A single week during the Selma campaign produced over 120 hours of surveillance. The sheer scale is staggering. By 1965, the FBI had built the largest single-subject surveillance archive in its history, and every minute was meant to provide ammunition, not for prosecution, but for pressure, for blackmail, for psychological war. Informants inside King's organization fed the Bureau a steady stream of private details, travel plans, hotel bookings, even the names of trusted aides. The files are littered with code names and redacted identities, but one stands out: Jack, an embedded source who reported directly to William C. Sullivan, the FBI's chief of domestic intelligence. These informant reports weren't just collected, they were weaponized. In July 1964, Sullivan circulated a directive stamped "Eyes Only," ordering his team to move beyond passive surveillance. The memo reads, "It may be necessary to take more aggressive action to neutralize King as an effective Negro leader." The word appears again and again in the Bureau's internal correspondence, stripped of legal pretense, stripped of ambiguity. The July order did not call for prosecution or public exposure. It called for psychological warfare. The Bureau's files trace the flow of intelligence from informants like Jack to the Special Services Division, where raw data was sifted for vulnerabilities. Sullivan's July memorandum laid out the next step. Personal weaknesses must be exploited. King's private life provides the leverage. The chain of command is precise. Internal archive tags link Sullivan's signature to a series of operational memos, each more explicit than the last. A planning note from August 1964 spells out the goal: prepare package for delivery, content to include audio evidence and unsigned letter. Objective: force resignation or worse. No device count appears in these memos, no bureaucratic distance, only the language of intent: neutralize, discredit, destroy. The Bureau's psychological campaign was not improvisational. It was planned, documented, and signed off at the highest levels. The assembly of the blackmail package was not a rogue act. It was the logical outcome of a strategy designed to break King's will by any means necessary. The letter was not dashed off in anger or composed in haste. Its sentences were shaped on an IBM Selectric, the Bureau's workhorse typewriter, each keystroke leaving the unmistakable imprint of federal issue ribbon on government bond paper. Forensic examiners later traced the paper's watermark, interlocked GPO initials, back to the U.S. government printing office. The ink, a carbon black blend, matched the ribbons supplied to FBI offices between 1960 and 1965. Every detail, from the font to the fiber, pointed to a document born of official channels, not an amateur's threat. The language of the letter is clinical, cold, and direct. "You are done," it begins. "There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation." The words are stripped of ambiguity. The letter sets a countdown, 34 days. Not a round number, not a common interval, but a deadline calibrated to fall just before the Selma campaign, when King's leadership would be most visible. The threat is not veiled. "King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. The tape was no less calculated. Recorded on an RCA Victor dictaphone, the reel contains a series of muffled voices, abrupt silences, and a persistent hiss, oral evidence, spliced and edited to maximize humiliation. The tape's gaps, measured at half-second intervals, are not accidental. Spectral analysis confirms digital splicing, a technique used to heighten drama and remove any exculpatory context. The voice on the tape, matched to a known FBI informant, whispers alleged details of King's private life. The message is clear: exposure or self-destruction. The envelope bore a Miami postmark, a deliberate misdirection intended to obscure its true origin. No return address, no fingerprints, only the contents, a typed letter, a reel of tape, and a deadline, pointed back to the Bureau's Special Services Division. The package was not the work of a rogue agent. It was the product of a chain of command that began with Hoover and ran through Sullivan, each step documented, each action logged. The threat had moved from planning to execution. The clock was now ticking. King read the letter in silence. 34 days. That was the deadline the anonymous author set, just over a month to do what they called the one thing left for you to do. The words were unmistakable. The threat, naked. He recognized the cadence of official language, the cold efficiency of a bureaucrat's menace. You are done. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation. He didn't hesitate. He told his closest advisors that he believed the FBI was behind the package. He recognized the pattern, the same phrases, the same obsession with his private life that had filled bureau memos for years. He saw the Miami postmark as a clumsy attempt at misdirection. The tape, too, was familiar territory. Muffled voices, spliced audio, accusations recycled from the Bureau's surveillance reports. King understood exactly what was happening. This was not a warning. It was a demand for his death, signed not with a name, but with the weight of state power. Coretta Scott King listened to the tape. She called it mumbo-jumbo. She dismissed the recording as nothing but noise and insinuation, a desperate attempt to sow doubt where trust had already been earned. Coretta's reaction was more than skepticism. It was a refusal to grant the FBI the authority it craved. She saw through the charade. She knew the real purpose was fear. King did not step down. He did not resign. He did not kill himself. Instead, he carried the letter to his inner circle, exposing the Bureau's tactics for what they were: psychological warfare, not justice. The package failed to break him. The countdown expired, and King pressed on, undeterred. The Bureau's most personal attack had failed. The movement continued. J. Edgar Hoover did not hide his contempt. In 1968, just months before King's assassination, Hoover told aides, "King is a fraud and a danger to the nation." By then, the Bureau's campaign had moved far beyond surveillance. The blackmail package was only the most visible proof, but for years, the full extent of the FBI's actions remained buried in classified files and redacted memos until the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, known as the Church Committee, began its investigation in 1975. The committee's findings were blunt. The final report, released in 1976, called the FBI's campaign against King an abuse of power and an unlawful attempt to destroy a citizen's reputation and force him out of public life. The report cited the original letter's language, "There is but one way out for you. You better take it," as evidence of intent to coerce suicide. Testimony from former Bureau operatives confirmed the chain of command. James W. Knight, a Special Services operative, told senators, "The suicide letter was conceived at the director's desk, turned over to Sullivan for execution, and never went through the Justice Department." A second witness, John B. Hart, added, "The only clearance we needed was Sullivan's signature. The DOJ was deliberately bypassed to keep the operation deniable." The Church Committee's verdict was unambiguous. The FBI's actions against Dr. King were wholly unjustified and constitute a clear violation of law and decency. The committee's exhibits included the original letter, the Miami postmark envelope, and the internal memos that referred to King as the most dangerous Negro in America. Decades later, in 2014, historian Beverly Gage discovered an unredacted copy of the suicide letter in the National Archives. The language was even more explicit than earlier releases. Every word, every threat, bore the mark of official authorship. The Bureau's own documents had become the final damning evidence. Revisionist historians have challenged the accepted meaning of the FBI's 1964 letter to Martin Luther King Jr. Some claim the Bureau's true intent was to force King to resign or refuse the Nobel Peace Prize, not to end his own life. Their argument often hinges on a single passage. "You are done. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation." They point to the ambiguity of the phrase "one way out." Roy Wilkins, then head of the NAACP, later argued that the letter could be read as a demand for King to step aside. Others note the lack of an explicit instruction, no direct command to die, only the threat of exposure. But the primary evidence is not so easily bent. The full unredacted letter, uncovered by Beverly Gage in 2014, leaves little room for doubt. "King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is," the letter reads. "You are done. There is but one way out for you." The letter sets a deadline: 34 days. The tape is described as proof of abnormal acts, with the promise that it will be released unless King acts. The Church Committee's 1976 report found the intent unmistakable: an unlawful attempt to destroy a citizen's reputation and force him out of public life. Evidence of intent to coerce suicide. The debate is not settled. Wilkins's reading is cited in academic articles and conference papers. Yet the Bureau's own files, the Senate's transcripts, and the words of King's closest allies all point in one direction. Andrew Young, later UN ambassador, recalled King's reaction. He said, "They want me to kill myself." Coretta Scott King dismissed the tape as mumbo-jumbo, but never doubted the threat's source or its purpose. What remains hidden is locked in the sealed surveillance tapes. The National Archives lists 1,452 reels, cataloged and boxed, their contents unknown. A court order keeps them closed until January 2027. The FOIA schedule is precise: no early release, no exceptions. For now, the last word belongs to the documents typed, signed, and stamped by the government itself. The rest waits in the dark, its secrets untouched, the questions still open. How far did the Bureau go, and what will the tapes reveal? King did not kill himself. He did not step down. He did not stop. Yet the FBI's own letter told him, "There is only one thing left for you to do." Most surveillance tapes remain sealed until 2027. Official secrets outlive the men they threatened. What happens when the truth, by design, arrives too late for justice? Drop your thoughts below.